Before covering the more advanced features, such as the payment reconciliation journals, let's first have a look at how to process payments manually. And I will do this by processing a payment from the cash receipt journal and one from the payment journal. So let's start with the cash receipt journal. So in here you can see that there are three different batches: bank, general and gyro. And what is very important here is the balancing account number. So some of these batches have a balancing account, a fixed balancing account, which means that by default everything will be posted, will be balanced to this account, which is also the way to set this up. So for that reason I will use the bank batch. There we go. And here you can see now the cash receipt journal. Also notice that I've collapsed the factbox pane in order to see a bit more fields. And when I would like to process a payment manually, the first thing I need to do is to enter the posting date. So I will stick with the work date, the 23rd of January, that's fine. Then very important, the document type. Now remember, in general journals we said to leave the document type blank. Here it's very important that we use payment or refund. Because by selecting the document type payment, the system will also process additional functionality related to, for example, payment discounts, payment tolerances, and so on. So that's why I always advise to use payments or refund as document type in cash receipts and payment journals. Then there's the document number, which is fine, and the account type. So although I could post to a GL account in cash receipt journals, in most of the cases we will use customers, because typically we can use the cash receipt journals to post customer payments. So I will select customer and then the account number. So this is of course the customer number. I can enter the customer number or name, or I can click the assist edit to look it up. So, and suppose that we have received a payment from customer 10,000. I can simply select the customer. Now the next thing that is very important is that we try to apply the payment, because probably the customer is paying one or more open documents like an invoice, credit memos, and so on. And the application process means that we will map the payment with one or more open customer ledger entries. More information on these applications in the following lesson. But here I will already show you how we can make applications. Now in general there are two different ways. I can click the apply entries action in the ribbon, or I can enter the applies to document number directly on the line. And so for example, if I see by looking at the payment message that the customer paid one invoice, I can go to the applies to document number, click here on the assist edit, and the system will show me all the open customer ledger entries of this customer. Next I can select the line. So suppose that the customer paid this invoice. There we go. I can click on OK. And you will see now that the document number is entered and that also the amount is updated. So notice the negative amount because we're posting a credit to the customer. This means now that if I post this payment, the system will also post the application. So let me do this. I will click on post. Do you want to post? Yes. So this is a first example of how to process payments manually. But let's look also at the second example. And like I just said, in this case, let's use the payment journal. So there, where you typically use cash receipt journals to process customer payments, we use payment journals to process vendor payments. Also here, I will use the Worldwide Bank operating batch, so the bank batch, where the Worldwide Bank operating is linked. And as you can see, this is quite similar to the cash receipt journals that we just used. Also here, I will collapse the factbox pane. And although there are a number of advanced functions, such as the suggest vendor payments, I can also simply enter payments manually in the payment journal. So this is quite similar to what we just did in the cash receipt journal. So also here, I will select document type payment. In this case, because there's no number series linked to the batch, I have to enter the document number manually. Next, I can go to the account type field. So by default, in most of the cases, this is probably vendor. But if you want, you can also switch to customer, to GL account, or any of the other types. But I will stick with vendor, and in this case, let's post the payment to vendor 10,000 London Postmaster. So in my cash receipts journal example, I have entered the applies to document number directly on the line. So this is something I could also do here by entering the applies to document number. But like I just said, there's also a second way of applying entries, and that's by going to the apply entries action in the ribbon. So let me do this. So I will click on apply entries. I will get the same overview as in my previous example, but in this case, I need to select entries by assigning the applies to ID. And this will also enable me to select multiple lines, something that I will do in one of the following lessons. Now suppose, and let me enlarge this a bit, that we have paid, for example, this invoice, so the invoice of 8,132. Again, like I just said, in order to select the line, we need to assign an applies to ID. And that's something that I can do by clicking on Actions and then Set Applies to ID. And what you will see is that the system will automatically use the document number as applies to ID. Here at the bottom, I can see the balance, and by clicking on OK, the system will insert the amount. If I scroll to the right, there we go. And we'll also post the application. But now, by using this way of applying, you will see that the applies to document number is not visible on the line. And this means that if you use the applies to document number on the line, by default, you're having a one-on-one relation. Or in other words, you can only apply one document at a time, while using the apply entries function in the ribbon will give you the opportunity to apply multiple documents at the same time. So everything is entered. Let me click on post, and the journal is posted. So let me now show you what happened on customer and vendor level. So I will do this for the customer, because for the vendor it's exactly the same. So if I now go to customers, and if I go to my customer at the Canon Group PLC, so let me click on manage and view. So for example, to open the customer card. And so here you can see the customer card. And what I'm interested in are the customer ledger entries. So by clicking on the Navigate tab, I can click on ledger entries. There we go. And here I can see the transactional data of my customer 10,000. And here you can see the payment I just posted. So the payment of 8,269.04. Now, very important is the remaining amount, because the remaining amount is showing an amount of 0. Which is telling me that this entry is applied. Now in this case, because we don't have that many entries, if I look a bit more at the bottom, I can see the invoice also with remaining amount. So probably these two have been applied with each other. I'm sorry. And so this line and the first line. But in order to be sure, there's a better way to get an overview of the applied entries. So let me expand the Factbox pane. Now, if you select an entry, the system will display here the number of applied entries. And by clicking here on the one, I can see the entry that the other one is applied with. So, of course, my invoice 103,015 that I've just used in my example. Okay, so that's the best, the fastest way to get an overview of the applied entries. Another thing that you see by posting the payment and at the same time the application is that the system has created a number of detailed customer entries. So if I select this line, I can click here on the remaining amount field, or I could go to Navigate and select here detailed ledger entries. So let me do this for this invoice line. And here you can see now that we have two detailed entries. The first one is the initial entry, so the entry created when the invoice was posted. And now the second line is the application. So when posting the application, the system will not modify the amounts directly on the customer ledger entry, but it will create additional detailed customer ledger entries. So in this case, the second one. And because the second one with entry type application has a negative amount, these two add up to 0. You see, so that's the way that receivables and payables are processed in Business Central.